Hey everyone, it's Carissa at Sprinkled with Glitter. Thanks for stopping by today. Today I am sharing the second card that I posted the other day for the Essentials by Ellen February 2017 release blog hop. It features this wonky backdrop stamp set. I love this stamp set. It's so versatile. All of these little images can be combined to create full backdrops or just partial backdrops on your card. And I'm going to show you it in use today, and I'm also going to be using this Hinged Thanks die. Now this is really cool because the left side of these letters, they don't cut, they just create a score line so that you can hinge it open. And I'm going to show you an example of that here. I've just cut it out of some white cardstock so you can see how this works. Now you can use this as like a window for a shaker card, or you can show some pattern paper through to the back. You could even cut those letters off and use it as a full window there. But I thought it would be fun to show you a way to use it today on a card. I'm going to separate this die over two lines. So I'm starting out with a card base. This is made from the Essentials by Ellen white linen cardstock. When I'm creating a really simple card, I like to use this linen cardstock as a base because I just feel like the texture adds a little something to this otherwise very clean and simple card. So I'm going to start by stamping this triangle backdrop. This is from the Wonky Backdrop stamp set onto my card base. Now I end up having to re-stamp this in the end, but I'm just going to go ahead and show you this anyway. I'm lining it up on my MISTI and I'm using that ruler along the top to help me make sure that I get it centered. And then once I got it mounted on the door of the MISTI, sometimes with these bigger, more solid stamps, I get a lot of air under there and then I find it doesn't work well. So I just pull up all but one side and kind of push the air out. Now I'm inking this up in some Radiant Neon Electric Coral Pigment ink. And because my pigment ink pad is a little bit dry, I'm going to double stamp this. So you saw me stamp it and then re-ink it and then stamp it once again. And then I have that really cool, fun, and vibrant color onto my card base there. So now that I have my card base stamped, I'm going to go ahead and work on the piece that's going to go in the center. And this is going to act as a window to where you can see that pattern coming through. Now I didn't want to have this all across and have it long as the die is intended. So I could do two things. I could either cut this die apart and have it in two separate pieces, or I'm just going to put the portion that I don't want to cut hanging off the edge of my cardstock. So I'm just making sure those cut lines on the N or the A, whichever line I'm cutting, are hanging off of the cardstock that I'm using here. And this is a really bright and fun cardstock from Basil. This is the Juicy Pear cardstock. It is one of my favorites. And I think that this is right along the lines of Pantone's Color of the Year. It may not be quite this yellow of a green, but it's a very bright green is Pantone's Color of the Year. So you're going to be seeing a lot of these bright greens throughout 2017. Now, I wanted to mount this on a piece of navy cardstock, but if I mount it on a solid piece of navy cardstock, you're only going to see the navy through it and not that cool pattern. So what I'm doing is I'm just placing this into my trimmer and I'm putting my blade down about 1/4 of an inch into the cardstock and then stopping it about 1/4 of an inch before I get to the edge of the cardstock. And I've done that all the way around. So now I have just a frame. Now, if you wanted to just cut out the portion that's behind the thanks part, you could do that, but I just figured this was the easiest way to do that. And now I'm going to mount this die cut piece onto my frame there. And in order to do that, I just brought in a piece of white paper so that you could better see the navy cardstock and you can kind of get a feel for how this is going to work on my card front. I just grabbed some 1/8 inch Be Creative tape, and this is just a really strong adhesive. I needed something really thin so that it wouldn't overlap my frame, and I didn't want to get in the way of the letters opening either. So I just put a strip of that adhesive all the way around the edge of that, and now I'm going to mount it onto this navy frame that I've created. Now to add a little dimension to the card, I'm going to adhere this onto the front of the card using some foam tape. So I'm just adding that to the back of this die cut piece here. And then I figured out that I did not stamp that backdrop in the correct place for it to show through on the thanks. The thanks was just shifted up a little bit, and the backdrop wasn't quite wide enough to fill up that space. So I needed to restamp a card base for this. So don't worry, I'm going to use that stamped piece later on in the card. It's not going to go to waste, but I just wanted to show you here. I am lining the card up in my MISTI. That is not adhered down that die cut piece. And I'm using a piece of acetate over the top of this so that I don't get any ink on the die cut piece. And then I am going to pick up the stamp using the door of the MISTI, and then I can remove that acetate piece. That acetate piece just allows me to see what's on the card or the card front, and allows me to place my stamp onto it but not get any ink, just in case I didn't clean it off really good. So now that I have this properly positioned this time, I am going to double stamp it again in that electric coral pigment ink. And then I'm going to clean my stamp, and I'm going to move my card over because I am going to nestle a little bit more of this pattern into itself. Now, the edge of this pattern lines up really nicely, so I just moved it over and lined it back up again and then inked it up in that pigment ink, and you're going to see that it connects perfectly. So if you just want to connect this all the way across the card, all you have to do is move it horizontally. You don't need to move it vertically at all because those edges line up really well. And once again, just to get the intensity in that color, I'm going to double stamp it. I really need a re-inker for this pigment ink pad. So now I'm going to bring in my big MISTI. I could have done the other technique on my big MISTI. I just was using my mini MISTI. I tend to do that. And I'm going to show you these MISTI creative corners in action. Now, I shared a video tutorial over at the Ellen Hudson blog where I showed you all the things that you could do. But for this case, this allows you to create a corner in the middle of the MISTI, anywhere you want it. Now, people have asked, can you use this in the mini MISTI? You can, but I really feel like it's more helpful in the large MISTI just because you have more surface area. So I have that magnetic corner up in my upper left-hand corner, and now I'm using this L piece just to make sure that I get this onto my card straight. So I'm just butting it up against that L piece, and as long as I keep that L along the bottom edge of my MISTI, I know that I'm going to get a straight 90-degree angle, and then I can adhere my piece down. Now, once I got this adhered onto the front of the card, it wasn't exactly where I wanted it to be. Yes, I screw up too. So I just took it over to my trimmer and trimmed it down so it's a little bit narrower. And now you can see how when those letters hinge open, you have that really cool pattern in the background. So I wanted a little bit of diagonal stripe pattern paper, but I wanted it to be in the navy. I keep a lot of this on hand in black and white. And so I just thought I'd show you how I do this. I take the black pad out of the MISTI so that I can use it with this cling stamp. And here I've inked it up in some Hero Arts navy ink and then just stamped it. And I usually double stamp it so I get a really nice, intense, rich color on the cardstock. And then I trim that down into a strip to put on the bottom of my card. And that piece that I stamped earlier that wasn't in the right spot, I just trimmed it down and then I cut a heart out of it. That is from the Folk Hearts die set from the Essentials by Ellen line. And I'm going to adhere that along the bottom. But I thought that this little green piece needed a little bit of pattern on it. So once again, I'm just taking this border stamp. This is from the Wonky Backdrop stamp set. And I am doing something very brave. I am stamping right onto that piece that has already been adhered with foam adhesive. Maybe not my smartest move ever, but it worked out okay. And I'm just stamping this in some Versamark ink and then moving my panel up and down to fill that area with a little bit of pattern. So now I've taken that navy and white striped pattern paper that I created. I mounted a piece of gold metallic cardstock behind it and then adhered it together with my tiny attacher. And now I'm going to use some ATG tape runner adhesive and adhere that onto the bottom of this panel. Once I get that adhered on, I'm just going to use a double layer of foam adhesive to adhere this stamped and die cut heart. And then I thought it needed one more heart, so I just cut another one out of some Essentials by Ellen linen cardstock and adhered that onto the front as well. Now, this card has zero glitter on it. So I had to add a little sparkle somewhere. So I just finished the card off with a few little sparkling clear sequins around the bottom where those hearts are. And you can see how these hinged letters really are fun to see that pattern through. And you can see how this would make a really cool shaker card as well. As always, I will have links to all the featured products in the description at YouTube, but head on over to my blog because there I'll have more still shots and a complete list of products used in this project. As always, thanks for stopping by. I hope you've enjoyed this project. Thank you for being so patient with me for the lack of videos lately. We are currently doing a remodel in our house and it is chaos here. Thanks for stopping by today. Until next time, I hope you have a fabulous day.